Your mom was right about bed bugs. Don't like bed bugs. Bed bugs are rough. Don't let that get out of hand.
My name is Parker Noble. I'll be your host for this week. And today we have Charlie Dawson, a University of Toronto student and a past renter with us. Welcome, Charlie. It's nice to have you here.
Lovely to be here.
So you are now in dorms, but you did rent for a little while before that.
Yeah, since about May of last year.
All right. So how did you pay for your rent?
Mostly with help from family. It was considered kind of a part of the expense with the university process, and my family had put aside quite a bit of money to deal with that. But going forward, I was expected to kind of find a position of some kind. For example, I'm planning to work this summer at RBC to help pay for it into the final couple of years of university. But starting out, similar to residence, it was expected to be taken care of.
Mm-hmm. I had a similar experience myself with my parents. They paid my rent along with school. It was kind of all together. So with that, what kind of challenges did you think you dodged not having to pay out of your own pocket for your rent?
Well, I had a little more wiggle room, me and my roommates, with budget in terms of what we were looking for. It's quite difficult to find a place in Toronto for, quite frankly, a reasonable price. And being able to stress a little less about seeking out, the very best deals available was quite a big help, kind of looking when you're so inexperienced in the market.
On the topic of budgets, what kind of budget did you follow?
We generally stuck to trying to get around $750 to $900 a person max, and I had two other roommates, so around $3,000 or less dollars total monthly, which, is kind of the best you can hope for in the city.
Would you say that the budget that you followed was really strict?
No. We originally wanted to go a bit more reserved with it, somewhere around the 2,500 or less range, but it kind of just broke after we spent quite a while looking. So eventually we knocked ourselves up a bit more and a bit more and a bit more until eventually we found the best place we could, around $3,000.
Mm-hmm. And so when you were already in your place, did you follow a budget then as well, with like all of the utilities that you had to have, or your groceries and fun money as well?
We were lucky. One of the best parts, and something that I think was a condition, was utilities included in the charge. That isn't something we wanted to have to handle ourselves, considering how complex it can get at certain points. But in terms of food and fun money and everything else, that was something we tried to figure out somewhat jointly, especially around food. We wanted to keep the fridge stocked, and so we went, all right, what do we need every month? How can we split that between ourselves? And on that point, we were fairly, everyone should be able to contribute a certain amount. But in terms of fun money and things that were more personal, I mostly treated it the same way I had the year before, which is, if I don't have money to use, I don't have money to use. And if I do, well, this is a fun thing.
So that seems a bit of a lax budget, kind of, with the if you have it, if you don't. Can you think of a time, either personal experience or for someone else, like a story you've heard, where following a budget got in the way of something else?
I suppose so. One of my roommates actually, quite frankly, could not go out with us on a couple of the events because saving up very strictly for, future eventualities can kind of cut in the way of immediate fun, which probably a wiser approach than what I take. Admittedly, if you want to use the word lax, you can use the word lax. But yeah, no, it can cut in, but in the end, I'm sure it's worth it.
So when you were planning on how to spend your money, how to save your money, what was what was your source of information when trying to figure out how you were to go about that?
My source of information? Well, my father's a banker.
That'll do it.
And he certainly had quite a bit to say about budgeting and the mindset you should have when approaching money and approaching renting and approaching everything that involves financing in this life and the next. So that was, a pretty solid and stable source of information how I should act around these things. Not to say I always followed it perfectly, but.
And for someone who doesn't have a banker as a father, do you have any suggestions for somewhere someone could look for advice or anything?
The best decision I ever made was having a roommate who was some ways older than me. someone who'd actually had to buy a place before, someone who'd actually had to deal with money before, someone who actually understood what we were getting into. I think if you can seek out the help or advice of a older student or an older friend, it can be quite helpful. Though I know that's not an experience everyone can share.
Mm-hmm. But it's good. It's not hard to find on campus.
No, and it's valuable. It truly is.
Yeah. So what's one thing about renting that you didn't expect when you got into it?
A lot can hide beneath the surface, even if you feel like you've done your due diligence and you've kind of looked into what utilities are provided, you've looked into the history of the neighborhood and the building. There's a lot that can surprise you around everything from neighbors to pests to issues with pipes. And you have to be prepared that things might not all be all sunshine and roses. I didn't have much of an exit strategy when things started to get rough with my place, and that was quite a drag on the last year.
Well, exit strategies are hard to come up with. Every lease is different. Is there anything in hindsight that you feel like you should have done that you didn't, whether it be with budget or with your place?
It's going to sound rough, but I should have been more prepared to let go. It's oftentimes difficult to get your way out of a lease. It can be trying. It's a lot of negotiation, a lot of debate, a lot of conversation. However, it is possible, and you need to be cognizant of the time when it becomes necessary. If you drag your feet, it makes everything grind to a halt, and that can cause a lot of tension with people who have to get out. Right? So I'd say, be more prepared for that as an eventuality. Rare, as I'm sure it is.
Not so rare. I had the exact same thing. I had to get a sublet. I had to leave my lease early, and it is a major hassle.
Yeah.
And really, lastly, what kind of advice would you give to someone who's like living on their own for the first time, having to manage themselves for the first time?
One, get roommates. Preferably ones you like, but every situation is different. But people you can talk things through with and, make sure you have a plan on various things with. That's incredibly important, especially when you're just starting out. And that's the second point, communicate with your roommates. Talk to them about how you're feeling about the building. Talk to them about how the budget's going. Talk to them about, what you're thinking, where's your head at. But that's all I can really say on it.
Yeah, good advice. That's all I have questions-wise for you, but is there anything else that you want to add that you think would be important for people to know?
Your mom was right about bed bugs. Don't like bed bugs. Bed bugs are rough. Don't let that get out of hand.
It's a good point.
But that's mostly it.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here and talking to me today.
You got it.
Awesome. Join us next time where we'll discuss what needs to change to help us afford housing in Toronto. My name is Parker Noble, and this has been Housing Hassles. Make sure to follow us everywhere you get your podcasts for future episodes.